was one of the greatest jazz musicians of the 20th century, influential to decades of music, and historically significant through the contribution of his love, devotion, and new style known as bop or bebop. Throughout his work, his rare ability to seek out the joy and beauty, regardless of how ugly something may be, beamed through in his unpredictable and erratic life. Charles Christopher Parker, Jr. was born on August 29, 1920, in Kansas City, Kansas, the only child of Addie Boxley and Charles Parker, Sr. When Charlie was 7 years old, his family moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where African American music such as gospel, blues, and jazz were a growing sensation in the 1920s and 30s. His father left Addie and Charlie when he was 11 years old, and to cheer her son up after his father's departure, Addie bought Charlie his first saxophone. Charlie had his first music lessons in the local public schools he attended, and began on the baritone horn. By 13 years old, Charlie favored the alto saxophone as his favorite instrument. Charlie practiced sometimes up to 15 hours a day, played in the marching bands at school, and played with a wide range of local blues and jazz artists, growing in his craft. Although he displayed no talent and lacked what seasoned musicians had, through his love of older jazz masters, trial and error, and studying traditional methods, he developed the technique, pitch, and rhythm of the saxophone. When Charlie was 15 years old, he was in love with playing so much that he dropped out of school to pursue a full-time career in playing, and married his childhood sweetheart, Rebecca Parker Davis. Within the same year, he developed an addiction to morphine while being hospitalized as a result from a car accident injury, and was nicknamed Yardbird or Bird by his loved ones.
Charlie Parker was influenced by many other saxophonists and jazz musicians. These influences included the sweet and relaxed solos and styles of tenor saxophonist Lester Young, the flowing improvisational alto sax of Buster Smith, the Tin Pan Alley style saxophone and song of Rudy Wiedoeft, and Rudy Valley's suave song, drums, and sax. The list goes on to encompass the energetic and fiery hot jazz alto sax of Frank Teschmacher and Jimmy Dorsey's distinct slide trumpet and other brass, the characteristic Chicago style with robust swing and full smooth sound of Bud Freeman's tenor sax.
Parker started out playing around his hometown with the Count Basie Orchestra and other local jazz and blues bands, taking part in the nightly after-hour jam sessions broadcasted on the radio at joints like the Segregated Reno Club on 12th Street. Influenced by instrumentalist Bud Johnson and Tommy Douglas, picked up extended chords and double time techniques, soon playing with the famed pianist Jay McShawn, aka Hootie, in 1938. Yardbird moved to New York only to go back to Kansas City for his father's death in 1939. Despite his father's death, Charlie joined the Harlan Leonards Rockets and played for 5 months before moving back to New York. Rejoined with Jay McShawn and his orchestra, the group jammed at clubs in New York and Chicago, such as Clark Monroe's Uptown House on 134th and the Spotlight Club on 52nd. While on tour with McShawn around 1942, Parker hit up jam sessions at Minton's Playhouse in Harlem and met trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie, later joining the Dizzy Gillespie All-Star Big Band. After a 6-week Hollywood nightclub tour with Dizzy in 1946, Bird was admitted to Camarillo State Hospital in California for 7 months because of a nervous breakdown and his addiction to drugs and alcohol. After his release from 1947 to 1951, Parker played solo and with others in nightclubs, radio studios, and other venues, and toured Europe where he made numerous recordings. Bird made an appearance in hundreds of albums over the span of his life and played with just as many great artists, such as Earl Hines, Thelonious Monk, Charles Mingus, Roy Haynes, Miles Davis, and Sonny Rollins. Charlie Parker's last performance was at Birdland Nightclub, which was named in his honor in New York City on March 5, 1955.
He told me one night we was out working, he said, "Hey man, let's go down tonight. There's this fella playing, what's his name? Bud Johnson. Bud Johnson. He's opening up for this fella named Charlie Parker." I say, "Yeah, Charlie Parker." He said, "You come find out who Charlie Parker is." We go up there. We see this concert, this fella, he toot on that horn, they play on that bass guitar. Man, they got us grooving and moving like that jazz music. It got me sweating. They had that club all segregating shit, man. I said, look, man, play on the stage. Is he not a black man? What are those friends of mine doing over there on the other side of the bar? Let them come get a good look at this fella Charlie Parker.
Well, growing up in Brooklyn, Charlie Parker, he really knew how to play the saxophone. I mean, back in the day, I thought that I'd do it, but hey, once I went up on 52nd Street with Dizzy, and I saw him play at the Spotlight Club, man, I learned a whole new world of saxophone. Me and my buddy Tony back in the day, we thought that he could play his drums and stuff. We see him playing with that stuff, get out of here, forget about it. We thought that he could play. Man, Charlie Parker, that boy.
But he sparked a modern jazz revolution at the time, along with some of his contemporaries, such as Louis Armstrong, probably is the most famous, but also Coleman Hawkins, Johnny Hodges, and Lester Young. Charlie Parker had a lot of musical talent even from a very young age, but he lived a very difficult life full of many tragedies and ups and downs. I mean, he died when he was only 34, but you could hear that in his music. He took the traditional smooth jazz melodies and he harnessed, the intensely passionate life that he had lived into his horn to create a sound that became really popular because it was true to the times. It was true to the times of the Depression. It was true to the times of early to mid 20th century for African Americans. And when you speak about Charlie Parker in that terms, I mean, he has influenced, since he was playing music, he's influenced every form of music and recording since.
Yardbird changed and inspired musician Sonny Rollins, saxophonist, actor, and writer Met Flory, and actor and singer Buddy Clark. To this day, the Charlie Parker Jazz Festival is celebrated in Manhattan, New York, to celebrate his impact on modern jazz.